There were some concerns of other municipalities too. From I think it was Mono, and I know there was some there's some Mono residents, and I believe some other townships as well that had some concerns. Would you like to comment on that?
So yeah, I mean, I talked to the majority of those folks. I know who they are, the residents that back on to that area. Um, I admire their passion. I appreciate the fact that they tried to influence an area. Um, you know, in the end, it's an Orangeville decision. Um, so I don't know what else you can say to that. I certainly
Yeah.
took their counsel, but it's not their property. It's Orangeville's property, and Orangeville can decide what they're going to do with it. And I inputted my thoughts, which was a no, and the rest of council inputted a different way. So I support my council mates, and we'll go forward. It's here we are, right? If you did watch that council meeting, though, is we used to, in previous history, was ask people where they live. They had to provide their address. And that seems to have gone away a little bit because I think people are nervous about providing their address. If you disagree with me and I just gave you my address, potentially you'll show up at my house and I don't know what you would do. So I understand that, but at the very least, people should be saying where they're from. I live in Orangeville, I live in Mono, I'm from wherever. And a lot of the people that were speaking that night were from Mono. And I thought it was important that even though I was voting against it, I wanted the citizens to know who was speaking. And the majority of them were Mono residents, not Orangeville residents.
That is good to know. That is because again, so I mean again, it is Orangeville's property, so I mean that's who should be prioritized too.
The other piece is to all of this is I can disagree to the cows come home about what an area is supposed to look like. The reality is we're hemmed in now as a town. We're a very small geographic footprint, and the reality is we need to be careful with the land, with what we have. So as we develop things, there isn't anywhere going back. And as I sit here talking to you today, I'm in the west end of town. I live on Spencer Avenue, and this area was a controversial area back in the day. This is supposed to be an industrial park that I'm sitting in today with my lovely boulevard tree and all the accoutrements of a neighborhood. So anyway, that's gone. We don't have that development land, and that's an absolute shame. So if we did want to have a Honda plant come here, we're limited in where they can go. So anyway, that's not industrial land over there, but the point is we just need to be very thoughtful about what we're putting because we don't have the space. Soon we'll be into when we pack out, and I think pack out is 2030, we'll pack out at around 36.5, like 36,500 residents. There's nowhere else to go. So that means you'll have infill projects. So, older buildings would get knocked down, that sort of thing. But we're not that far away from it, and there won't be land left.
That will bring a lot of change to the neighborhood too. And I mean,
Yeah.
and if it's all going towards residential, is it really bringing a lot more revenue into the town besides taxes on the people and putting more strain?
Well, residential development is a funny thing. Like, you certainly get the development charges up front, and the town benefits from that. And there is the tax base that increases, so we benefit from that. But the way it works is over time, large capital projects they actually hurt the town and cost the town money. So, for example, my home is now 20 years old over here in the West End. I don't know what's going to be another 15 years or so, 10 years or so. My street's going to need to be repaired. Just to do in front of my house, I don't know the numbers, Josh, but let's say it's 10 or 15,000 to do the street in front of my house. I only pay $6,000 a year in taxes. So right away we're out money. Like it's a benefit in the short term. In the longer term, it's not, right? So
That's true. And even though there's a lot of empty commercial buildings, and there might even be more coming up here soon, because of COVID. Like, at least the people in the houses are there, and they're paying taxes ongoing versus empty buildings. Although the property owners are the ones that actually pay the taxes.
Well, Josh, even though we say that about commercial buildings, and certainly we are going to see some issues with some businesses for sure from a commercial standpoint, restaurants or other businesses struggling, which is an absolute shame. But if you're a manufacturer and you want to come to this town and have something of larger size, it's very difficult to find a building. So we work with different businesses on a frequent basis who are asking us for help in finding a spot. And there just isn't en masse buildings available for larger businesses to come and run their wares out of. So Orangeville just doesn't have that as an option right now. It's a bit of a quandary.
I've heard the same thing. I mean, there was a few organizations I know waiting for commercial buildings to come up, and one of their options that was presented to them was the Pinehurst building, and that was out of their scope.
Yeah, I bet. Well, that Pinehurst building is an expensive building right now. It's up for sale.
Yeah.
The other piece is, you think back to the election, and there was a lot of thought about how do we reduce our taxes, and people like to use the line, well, we need to increase our industrial taxes so there isn't so much pressure on the residential, and I do agree with that fundamentally. So that's a fact for sure. The reality is, how do you do that? How do you implement that? And you just think about the impediments that we have. We don't have the buildings available. And to really truly make a meaningful difference, like back to the Honda plant example, if you wanted to have the Honda plant come here, yes, that would make a meaningful difference to us. But to really push the needle, you'd need like 3 Honda plants. That's how far we are to residential versus industrial taxes. Like, we've got a long ways to go. We'd have to open up a slew of manufacturing facilities that would pay taxes to be able to offset the residential model. It's a long ways.
And that would bring change to the town too. I mean, if we were even able to pull it off in a perfect world, right? Like, similar to the residential development, but at the same time, that would possibly bring in more long-term benefits to the town than more residential growth, especially high density residential growth.
Yeah, agreed.
Like that. So I mean, that's completely reasonable. Thank you for going into that. I appreciate that.